Having worked with my hands for most of my life, I'm a firm believer in the idea that Jesus' teachings make more sense when we've got a bit of dirt under our fingernails, especially given that they were addressed to an agricultural society. When I get out and about at the moment, when I hear the struggles of people who are coming down to the church to pray, when I think of those that don't have a safe, warm home to isolate in, and God forbid when I watch the news, it's easy to think that all is not right in the world. If we take the Beatitudes as an example, it's easy to think the poor are not blessed in a time when the gap between the haves and the have-nots is getting bigger. Indeed, it's hard to think that those who mourn will be comforted when our mental health support systems are struggling. And it's hard to believe that the meek will inherit the earth in a time when people who are arrogant and boastful are trying to grab power. So Jesus offers us this parable about wheat and weeds, which at first may seem a hard teaching with its talk of fire and judgment, but to be silent would mean siding with the oppressor. God does no such thing. In fact, woven throughout the Bible, especially in the prophets, we're reminded that God is on the side of the poor and the widow, the orphan, the stranger in the land. God is not blind to those who work evil and injustice, and everyone will give an account of their deeds. This idea might frighten us, conjuring up images of God as an angry, distant judge, rather than as loving, patient, and gracious. I think part of the problem is that we get caught in false binaries, trying to separate the good guys from the bad guys. And the goodies often tend to be people who are like us, whose values are like ours, people who vote like us. I think when we look more closely at Jesus' teaching, he's talking about cosmic forces of good and evil rather than who's in and out of the holy club. In Jesus' life, we see that he disrupts this idea of a righteous in-crowd. He hangs around with people who are outsiders, people seen as sinners, and says that they're not far from the kingdom. I think the key thing here is a little bit of horticultural knowledge. Jesus talks about a weed which surrounds the roots of the wheat, choking it and robbing it from the nutrients that come from the ground. It's quite possible that he's talking about the bearded darnel or false wheat, which looks identical to the real wheat. This bad seed, as Jesus calls it, represents the offspring of the evil one who resists the children of the kingdom of God. The problem is, we can't really tell the difference. Indeed, I wonder whether that is the central point of this parable, teaching us that we must be patient and allow God to be judge, not us. We can't go around tearing at people and systems and situations. A good farmer is patient and discerning, and indeed the farmer in this parable is God, not us. We might want to admit that, humanly speaking, it's not so easy to separate the good from the bad. In fact, there's some ambiguity about all of us, whether individually or collectively. As the reformer Martin Luther said, there's a sinner and a saint inside each of us. I wonder whether Jesus' talk of reaping has more to do with the good seed and the bad seed inside each of us, whether that's in ourselves, in our churches, our faith communities, our societies, even our politics. It's not so much about God picking sides, but rather sifting the good seed and the bad seed inside each of us. I believe that the fire of God is a refining fire, not a destructive one. We might want to think today what part of the garden God is calling us to. Where is God calling us to get our hands dirty? And what might be getting in the way, choking us or stopping us from getting that good nutrition from God's soil? It could be our low self-esteem, it could be arrogance, prejudice, fear even. Sometimes I think the danger zone is where ignorance and arrogance collide. We must remember that this is never as simple as stomping about tearing up weeds. In fact, that's a pretty quick way to ruin a garden. Instead, we prayerfully engage with the gentle work of the Spirit, and we ask God to guide us and give us patience. Where is God guiding you today?